Hi everyone, welcome to the breakdown video for the Baqir character model. Baqir is this red panda mascot character for animation Sherpa, Richard Lico's new online animation school. I had the great opportunity to collaborate with Richard on this project. He's a game industry legend in animation, and you might know his work from games like Halo, Destiny, and Moss. The character is rigged by him and is available for free on Animation Sherpa's website, so please go check out the rig and also further information about the animation school. So, since this was technically a commission piece, I wanted to structure this video as a freelance walkthrough rather than a regular time-lapse. This project had a lot of back and forth between me and Richard. All the notes, iteration, and ideas that came up during the communications were really great and made this into an ideal freelance case for me. The first step in a freelance is to have a good conversation with the client to find out what needs to be done. He told me this was a character that needed to be built for an animation school. It needed to be rigged, provided to students, and also serve as a mascot character, the face of the school basically. There are roughly two types of 3D character art freelance I've done. One is where there's a 2D concept art or design ready that I can work from, and the other one is where you have to work out a design from scratch. The Baqir character turned out to be the latter. Also in the conversation, Richard told me he wanted the character to be a red panda and resemble a Sherpa. On top of that, he wanted the aesthetics to feel like a character made at Polyarc, the studio where they made the game Moss. This was so that the animation school could be associated with the animation style that he was known for. After all this, Richard provided me with references and inspirational materials to work from. I was very lucky to be working with a client so clear and descriptive in the art direction. He gave me some Polyarc character screenshots for a 3D style reference. This mouse character with the scrolls were the main one. He wanted to put similar scrolls on the red panda character as well. He also gave me a close-up picture of this red panda and an image of a girl from Tibet, noting that he really liked how this baby was held on the back. I could possibly use this but replace the baby with the scrolls. After getting all the necessary infos, I put together a list of reference images using PureRef. I add all the provided images, but also tried to find as many of my own as possible. I collected costume references from the Tibet-Nepal area, cloth references, and also other 3D models and renders that could give me a good shape, design, and sculpt style guide. Also, I looked for a lot of red pandas, both photos and 2D design out there to get a good idea of how I could possibly stylize this animal. I start directly in ZBrush to block out the design. This is a quick and dirty first pass to get to a point that shows the overall design and direction. So what you will see from now is a time lapse of the first quick design blockout. I'll let it play and I'll be back in a bit. So this is the result of the first design pass. As you can see, I kept it very loose and rough, not committing to any shape and look. Since red pandas are mostly defined by its unique fur color, I polypainted the model in ZBrush from a very early state. I did prepare a turnaround sheet in Photoshop from some simple ZBrush BPR renders with the default skin material and sent it over to Richard Lico for notes. And later, here are the notes I got. One note was that the default pose was too human-like. He wanted it to be more true to the animal anatomy, like in one of the polyart character screenshots. This was a great note because I also learned in the process a nice backstory to the character Quill from the game Moss. Apparently Quill was also modeled in a more human shape at first, but in the animation state it did not feel right, and when they changed it to a more accurate animal form, it became an adorable character. Cool! I probably should have paid more close attention to the reference images in the first place, but... And second note was an animation related note, that the cloth around the neck might be covering the shoulder area a bit too much, potentially making the animation deforming more difficult later on. Third note was that the character felt a little bit too old. Those were the three major notes at this stage. Some compliments were also sent, which is great. He liked the overall design, feel and colors. Also, the choice to add a bottle on the side turned out to be a great thing, more room for the secondary animations. So next up you will see me addressing these notes, but also at the same time I'm working on cleaning up some mesh, further refining the shapes and the design. I'll let it play, so see you in a bit. That was a way more quicker one. So here's a bit more of the refined mesh. To maintain consistency, I made a similar turntable sheet and sent it over. And then sometimes later, I got some more notes. This time, the notes were mainly about the face refinements. Richard sent me back some paintovers on the turntable to clearly show what he meant. Paintovers of screenshots are a great way to communicate notes and refinements between 3D artists and directors. As you probably can see from the image, he pushed around the features of the face to get a more natural look. The eyes needed to be pointed out more, aligned to the curve of the head, and the forehead shape a bit more straight. Again, I will address these notes as well as further working on the sculpt as a whole. The back and forth stops a bit at this point, because you can pretty much say that the design is locked down. When this happens, and when rigging is part of the scope, I often like to send over a decimated version of the model to provide some proportional guide for the rigging. This way, the rigging has something to start with and do not have to wait for the final model to be ready. At this point, I am at the finishing stage of the hyperpoly. That means I finish up the mesh surface, apply details, and divide up the model into groups to prepare for the retopology. Now I have the final high poly. This gets exported to a .fbx file and get brought into 3D code. I set it up so each part of the high poly is separated and in different baking groups. In 3D code, I need to create retopology layers that matches the name of the high poly parts and amount. By doing this, the map baking process later will be much easier. The UV will be done here in 3D code as well. When doing retopology, I always try to make the poly count as low as I can, but also trying to consider the purpose of the 3D model. In this case, I knew it was going to have somewhat of an acrobatic animation, with the scrolls and claws swinging around, so I ended up adding a little bit extra poly count to cover the stretchings. I also did not want any hole in the mesh, so no hidden polygons are deleted in the model. All the model parts end up being closed hole meshes. Once the UV is done, I do a quick test bake in 3D code. This is to check if there are errors in the UV map or layout. When that's all clear, I bring both high poly and low poly into Marmoset Toolbag 3 to perform a final bake. When the baking is done, I save out the normal map, ambient occlusion map, world space normal map, position map, curvature map, and the thickness map. And just for fun, sometimes I bake out the other maps too. The textures will be the base to start the texture process in Substance Painter. Here, the challenge was to find the balance between the pre-made smart materials and the hand-painted surfaces. I end up stylizing the smart materials using filters and hand-painted layers. The face and fur I kept 100% hand-painted. When the textures are good enough, I put together a marmoset toolbag scene with proper physical-based rendering materials and lighting to present the final look. When satisfied with the rendering, I export some images and put them into a .zip file together with the model and textures and send it over to Richard. The textures I sent him was an Unreal Engine 4 template with 3 textures: color map, normal map, and a multi-map that includes ambient occlusion, roughness, and metallic. I also sent him a keyshot template, which is a more traditional texture set. It's good to have options sometimes. The next and final note I got back came with a temp rig and an animation. Richard skinned the model to a joint set and transferred over one of its existing animations to it, to check if everything is working fine. Sometimes you don't find out some stuff until you see it in motion. And it turned out that some proportions needed some adjustments, as well as some topology fixes. The head was a bit too big, giving it too much of a theme park mascot feel. The legs were too narrow and was not reading as legs in the movements. The bottle felt a bit small compared to the head and hand sides. These edits Richard did directly in the rig by scaling some of the joints down. The topology fixes, although, I had to do on my side. The part that needed the fix was the pants mainly. It was not deforming in any ideal way in the motion. As a reference, he pointed to one of the characters from Polyart. Note that the topology here is wrapping around the model in a nice curve, versus the one I originally made had more of a straight line across. To fix this, I used the Quadro tool in Maya to draw a new topology over the existing model, and later transferred over the UVs to maintain the texture. I then merged that edit with the model Richard adjusted, and that was the final model submission I did. And the result is what you can see here on the screen. This will be the end of this breakdown video. Hope you enjoyed it and hope it was any helpful. If you have any questions or requests, please send them to me anytime or put them in the comment below. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.